Hello and welcome to Parenting for Thought. Today's episode talks about all things postpartum. Tiff D'Amico is here sharing not only her knowledge about postpartum depression, but about her own loss. So if this is going to be too much for you, please keep yourself safe today. Around the 32-minute mark, go ahead and skip 30 seconds to a minute and join us after. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.
Our goal is to, raise whole children. And what we do is we sacrifice ourselves over and over, and we don't see the connection between the way that we treat ourselves and the way that our children are going to treat themselves, right? Like I say to moms all the time, like you said it just a minute ago, if this were your friend, what would you be telling your best friend? What would you be telling your sister?
Welcome to Parenting for Thought, the podcast that talks about things that parents want to know. And even if not, we're here anyways.
Like it.
Thank you. I worked really hard on that one. And when I say I worked really hard, what I mean is I wasn't sure what I was going to say until my first recording, and then it just happened, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty much accurate. I'm going to stick with that.
That's awesome. I love when that happens. It doesn't happen to me. I spend a lot of time working on things that I don't need, I don't need to spend this much time on it, but I do because my brain is like, no, it's not perfect.
See, and for me, it's like the ADHD brain at some point just takes over and is like, no, be impulsive, do the thing. It's going to be fine. And if it's not fine, we'll figure it out then.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a gift.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I run my normal life. I think when it comes to my business, though, I'm so much more guarded. I don't know why.
Well, perhaps before we get too deep down the rabbit hole, I should introduce you and then let you introduce yourself for the lovely people who are listening to my little baby podcast. So yes, friends and parents and strangers on the internet, I have Tiff D'Amico. Hopefully I said that right.
You did.
And Tiff is honestly an absolute badass. And when I found out what Tiff does for work, I got real excited, and it's not going to be hard to figure out why once Tiff explains what they do. Over to you.
So yeah, it's actually kind of difficult, I think, to explain what I do. But in the short wording, I work with mostly neurodivergent moms as they transition to motherhood, helping them plan and strategize for a postpartum experience that is free from anxiety, depression, rage, and all the fun stuff that 1 in 5 moms get to experience after they give birth. So sort of a coach, sort of a mentor, sort of a strategist, sort of a doula, a little bit of everything all wrapped up into one.
Tiff, I don't know that I can put my disappointment into words for how we treat birthing parents. It is wild to me how now you're in the US, right?
I am in the US, so whatever you're about to say is worse here.
Exactly. So as a fellow born and raised USCN person, the amount of rhetoric around you're pregnant, now you must have the baby, and anybody who's even unwillingly paid attention to the news will probably know that bodily rights are, how to phrase it, they're under attack.
That's exactly how I would phrase it, yeah.
Yeah. You can't call people pro-life anymore because it's not about pro-life, it's about forced birthing.
Yep.
So first of all, they're forced to have babies that they either didn't want to have or desperately wanted to have, but it's no longer medically safe to have. And then we're like, by the way, you don't get any time off of work to care for the child. By the way, your spouse doesn't get any time off of work to help you. By the way, every penny you earn goes to childcare. By the way, hope you don't suffer a postpartum psychosis because we'll
Mhm.
throw you in jail.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's not, and that doesn't even cover things like the poverty cycle
Mhm.
or the cost of living. It, it's
Lack of mental
out
health care.
it's too much. It's not okay. And even over here in Austria where they have that you get money when you have a baby.
Yeah.
You get time off of work. Sometimes your partner gets time off of work. Even then, there's still so many gaps. And I've known folks with postpartum depression who have had the range of, I'm kind of depressed. Maybe an SSRI will get
Mhm.
me to where I need to be. And that's been enough for them. And that's, oh my God. I mean, if you can't make your own serotonin, store bought is fine.
Mhm. Yep. Agree. Agree.
Ra- Ranging to being on a psych hold for psychosis for their own safety and the safety of their family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Tiff, what's going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much any time that it's something that has to do with women in particular, or um,
Mhm.
we're ignored. Everything that we go through is, they'll figure it out. They'll be all right. And that's very much even for people who are giving birth in like a better situation where they do have money and it was planned and they are in a partnered relationship with support and all that. It's still so flippin' hard because one, society doesn't prepare us for this at all. I mean, it's pretty impossible to prepare for parenthood anyway, but we don't prepare at all. It's here's a baby registry and I've decorated my nursery. And beyond that, there's literally no postpartum preparation. And even people like who are type A personalities, who are most of my clients, they want to prepare, but there's nothing out there. There's no resources. You might take a parenting education class or you can prepare for breastfeeding, but as far as the realities of day-to-day life as a new mother in a society where there is no village, there's no way to prepare for that. So the problem is women are made to feel, and when I say women and moms, I basically mean anyone who's identifying as a mom, right? Like uterus or not, like whoever.
Yeah.
If you call yourself mom, that's who I'm talking about. So but
Yeah.
we've been conditioned from birth that this is your job, this is your responsibility, how dare you complain. And that's the other problem, is when it is hard, we're embarrassed, so there's some shame attached to it, like why am I struggling so hard when it's so easy for her
Yeah.
and her and her. We have our own generation of mothers themselves. I mean, my mom, I love her so much, but she basically literally said to me when mine was little, like, well, I figured it out, you will too. And there's this idea of like the rugged independence here in America, especially,
Mhm.
where it's like, oh no, 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 you can do it. You're a woman, you can do it. But there's so many layers. I mean, we get, I don't know how it is in Austria, but we get a 6-week checkup with the OB. That is it. Literally no other support. So they give you the little Edinburgh scale where they check, while you're still in the hospital. Hey, are you feeling weepy? Are you? Of course, everyone is weepy. It's baby blues right there.
God,
And then at
are
six
you
weeks, you get,
feeling weepy?
yeah, yeah. Like there's
That's
like
the
9 questions. It's so it's generic, and you're
but
taking it at the time when you're like still you're like, what just happened? A human came out of me, and I'm trying to figure out how to breastfeed. So there's no reason for it at that early stage. And then at 6 weeks, they give it again. And literally, I mean, I've talked to clients all the time. They're like, they gave it to me and they don't give you any guidance beyond it. It's like, well, you should go see a therapist. Okay, great. I can't afford a therapist. Who's going to watch my baby while I go see the therapist? It's just so many layers. And also, so many women, we don't see it in ourselves. So myself, like, for example, postpartum anxiety for 3+ years. Now, this was in 2009. Postpartum anxiety wasn't really talked about. So I had Googled postpartum depression, a bunch of times. I was like, that's not it. That's not what I'm feeling. So I was just like, and I was a birth worker at the time. I was already a doula and a birth educator.
oh my
So
God.
yeah, so I was like clueless. So I finally found a therapist 3 years out, and she was like, this sounds like undiagnosed postpartum anxiety. And I was like, what? I never even heard of it. So not only are we not helping moms when they do visibly need the help, but we're not recognizing it in ourselves. in our friends, our partners don't recognize it because there's very little education around it. And then throw in neurodivergence on top of it.
Oh God.
It's literally some research has shown that it's like we are 6 times more likely to struggle with postpartum anxiety, depression, any of these PMADs, perinatal mood or anxiety disorders, because life is already, pretty hard for us as it is, extra, right? And then you throw a baby into the mix, and most of us have figured out throughout our life how to manage, right? We, especially for
Right.
us high masking individuals, like we've figured the systems
Yes.
out. Then the baby comes, and suddenly, you can't do any of that anymore, right? And then throw in sensory overload, um, the disruption of routine, all of these different layers. And but again, if you don't understand the connection of this is why I'm feeling this way. Also, on top of that, right, Emery, you know that many adults in general, but specifically adult women, are ADHD, are autistic, and have no idea. So not only are you dealing with the neurodivergence, but you're also dealing with not knowing about your neurodivergence and a new baby. Also, here's another layer of it. At age 38 is when perimenopausal symptoms on average start to show up. So a lot of women are having
I
babies
didn't
in their mid to late 30s, right? So I didn't know that
I
either until very
didn't know
recently.
that it could start. I'm literally sitting here before you, a 38-year-old.
We'll start paying
Um,
attention. Yeah. But
it's
again, that's
it's
another
very
thing they don't
difficult.
help us with. They don't help us.
Yeah.
It's just like, she'll figure it out.
Oh my gosh.
But like, yeah, yeah. So we get all these layers and the lack of social support and all the other
Yes.
challenges. So of course, now that the statistics here in the States anywhere, 1 in 5 women are getting a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. But that's what's reported, right? So we have all these other, it's a very low
Thank you.
estimate. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Can we I wanna talk for a minute with you about this, this "I am woman, hear me roar," and how toxic that has become.
Oh,
I it
yep.
it was intended as a boost. It was intended to be, as women were stepping into their own once they were finally able to start getting bank accounts in their own names
Mhm.
and these other things, and once they started being recognized as people with autonomy, or some version of it anyways, it there are times when it can be a really beautiful thing, and it can be very
Mm.
like village-esque and uniting folks. But then it's, in my opinion, based on what I witness in the world, it swung the pendulum so far to the other side where it's
Mhm.
like, well, I'm a woman, I can do it. I don't need support, or I, just like
Yep.
you said, I'll figure it out because that's what I have to do to survive.
Mhm.
And how at what point, and I say this, in my community of friends, and I've said this to clients, how bad does something need to get for you to believe that you deserve the support that you would advocate for someone else to get?
Yeah, that's I like the way you phrased it. I'm trying to think, how bad does it have to get? Because in my experience, personally and with clients, there's no bottom. Like they'll just keep
Right? It can
going.
always get
Yeah.
worse. It
Yes.
can
And
always get worse. You could literally be homeless, living in your car with
mhm.
your brand new baby on your last scoop of formula and be
Mhm.
like, "Well, but look at how much I
Yeah.
have." No, babe, go
Yeah.
get support.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to that too, right? There's still so much stigma,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
also not even just the stigma of it, but we're so afraid too of medicine, like what you said earlier, right? Like, but so many, especially the mental health meds, right? We are so
Yep.
afraid. I was afraid myself, and um, I struggled a real long time without the meds. I mean, my little guy is 10, so there's 5 years in between my two kids, and I never got better after my first was born, and I had another one 5 years later, and it was still another 2 or 3 years before I literally had a breakdown in the bookstore with my kids, and I passed out on the
Oh
floor,
my
and I was like, "Okay,
god.
I need to try meds," right? But I had tried
Yes.
everything else and nothing.
Yes.
Literally days on my Lexapro and I was a different person, and I'm still really pissed off at myself. Yeah,
Wow.
because I look back and I go, my kids, not only did I suffer for 7 years, but my kids suffered. They saw a mom who
Mhm.
was angry and on edge and stressed. It could have been so much better for them, and I see in my 15-year-old the effects of my postpartum anxiety. So this is what we have to
Wow.
talk to moms about, is it's not because we will make ourselves suffer. We don't care. We
Yes.
don't care. Um,
Yes.
but once we start to realize this is affecting your child, this is going to, hands down, no doubt, affect your child and the way they function in the world. Because all of us, our goal is to not F up our kids. Like, that's our goal, right? We're a cycle breaking generation of mothers for the most part. And
That's what I'm hearing with my clients too.
yeah,
That's exactly what it is
yes,
about, I don't wanna do to my kid what my parents did to me,
right.
because here I am 30 years later suffering every
Yes.
day
Hmm.
because my mom didn't tell me she loved me, or,
Yeah,
like, let
yeah,
me cry it out one too many times, and
exactly.
here I
Yeah,
am, a
yeah.
broken person.
Right. So
Yes.
our goal is to, yes, raise whole children. And what
Yes.
we do is we sacrifice ourselves over and over, and we don't see the connection between the way that we treat ourselves and the way that our children are going to treat themselves, right? Like I say to moms all the time, like you said it just a minute ago, if this were your friend, what would you be telling your best friend? What would you be telling your sister? But we
Yep.
still refuse so often to see it, right? And also, we've just been so convinced that our worth lies in our paycheck, right? In our capitalist country, our capitalist system that we live in. So our worth is in our paycheck. So as soon as you're on mat leave and you're not bringing a paycheck, where's my worth now? So then you're like,
Mhm.
this baby, this is my value. This is how I will prove to the
Yes.
world that I
Yes.
have value, is I will be an amazing mom. And I will also be an amazing wife. And I will also, if I'm going back to work, I will also be an amazing employee. And what we have to learn is back to what your original question was, this whole like, I am woman, hear me roar thing. We cannot have it all. You can, actually. I always say this. You can have it all. You just have to want less. You have to want less, and then you can have it all. And this goes for everything from the way you function in your home. Like, you have to be okay for a little while with your house being a little bit less organized and clean than it was before your baby arrived. You have to. But moms will say, I can't stand the dirty floor. You can. That is still a choice. I'm sorry. No matter how ADHD we
Mhm.
are, no matter how autistic we are, we still have to be able to find those tools. And now we're not all going to do it on our own. That's why we need
Yeah.
social support. We need our partners to be aware of these things. We need
Yes.
our friends. So
Yes.
we all need to be talking about this more and more and more, so that we have support around us. And the other thing is, like, we were never meant to do this alone. Parenting was not an individual venture,
No.
right? So we have our
Yes.
babies, we have no preparation, and then we go home behind closed doors. We've never seen people give birth. We've never seen the what happens after women give birth. We don't know what's normal. We don't see people breastfeed, and so when you try to breastfeed, you don't know what's normal, and you don't have anyone to
Yeah.
ask, and you're trying to do all of this alone.
Yes.
Sleep deprived, your partner, like you said, is probably back to work very quickly. So you're left alone to
If you
figure
have a
this out,
partner.
if you have a partner. And then if you do have the partner, they're at work, so you're figuring out the baby, you're figuring out how to manage life in the home, and they come home, you're not going to sit down and teach them, right? So then what happens is, when in the relationship, you have this dynamic now where the woman is still the one doing everything, no matter how much of a feminist she was going into this, no matter how much she thought
Yes.
we're going to have equal footing in the relationship. It's just not set up that way, and it's on purpose.
Nope.
It's on purpose.
Yes. Oh my god. I already know we're gonna have to do a part 2, because I have so many of my own thoughts that are just racing through my head, and I also have so many questions. So, like, can we go back to this Edinburgh scale for a hot
Yeah.
second?
Yeah.
And can I just share the absolute ire that is filling me and my soul right now? Because, like, are you feeling weepy? You might as well ask anybody on any given day, "Are you feeling a little tired?" Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well,
Yeah.
not to mention birth itself. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's ancient. Yes, it's animalistic and natural and all of these other things. Babe, it's traumatic. it is a massive bodily function
Mhm.
that also doesn't always go according to plan.
Not usually, right?
And like there's already such a, on the mommy boards, the Facebook mommy groups. Oh God, if you're listening and you're in a Facebook mommy group, like, can I just give your heart a hug?
It's rough. It's rough out there. Yeah.
It's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal. And I'm I know several folks who have had terrible birth stories, and I know several folks who have magical birth stories.
Mm.
None of it is guaranteed. And then there's people out there who are like, well, I want to have a home birth because that's what's right for me. If that's what's right for you, like, go do that. Go do the thing that's right for you.
Yeah.
But even within that, there not only are there no guarantees that it's going to turn out the way that you're hoping it's going to turn out, but then you can't even share the story because somebody is going to have a freaking opinion about the way that you birthed a child from your body.
Yep.
And don't think you can get around it if you're adopting, because I'll have something to say about
Oh,
that
yeah.
too.
Mhm.
It just doesn't end. And then I think about the village that
Yes.
we're all missing. And I'm like, if you can't find your people, if you can't create this village, even if you have the best partner in the world, even if you have grandparents nearby, it's not enough.
Oh,
That's
no.
not going to fulfill a person with everything that they need. Sure, there's always exceptions to the rule. If you're hearing this and you're like, "No, I'm living my best life with only those supports." Fine, then this
Great.
isn't for you.
Right.
I'm delighted for you. We're not worried about you right now. We're
Right.
worried about the other ones.
Mhm. Yeah, which is the
I
majority.
Exactly. And even people who have had great birthing stories, people who have close family nearby, it's not like postpartum depression or anxiety or any sort of a postpartum wonky feel of some sort. It's not like it checks out your situation and is like, "Oh, no, you're good. Okay, I'll pass you by."
Right.
Like, you
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
a choice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can you have people who are, of the upper bracket of income and have all the supports available that are still gonna end up with postpartum depression. It's not it's not only that piece because regardless of how much support you have, as you said, it's still this mind-blowingly shocking change to your entire life that we're simply not prepared for. And again, it goes back to the fact that there is no village and we don't see what's normal and we
Mhm.
don't, you know, so many of us are suffering alone behind closed doors with the same exact problems that our neighbor is having, right? Like I
Oh
mean,
my
yeah,
god.
my neighbor across the street had her baby a year ago, and she knows what I do for a living. Yet she still never reached out until months and months in. She came over and said, and you could tell she was like shy to tell me, I have postpartum anxiety. Like she was embarrassed that she didn't come reach out to me. And I was like, right here. Why do we do this to ourselves? What is it that are we embarrassed? Are we, do we
Yeah.
just believe there is no help? Um, do we feel so closed off? We just have this such a lack of connection that we don't even know how to ask for help from people.
It I have this with some of my clients as well, or not even clients, but people who want to work with me but won't pull the trigger, won't jump off the diving board. And maybe this is true for your clients as well, but it's almost like they're afraid of the process because they got so used to suffering in their holding pattern
Mhm.
that change, even if it brings something good, it's like the idea of changing things is such a huge concept and so outside the comfort zone that they're
Mhm.
like, now I'll just stay in my holding pattern of hell because at least I know what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The enemy that we don't know is always scarier. But here's the thing too, and now of course I just totally ADHD forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I think there's also a lack of trust in reaching out for help because we've been disappointed by so many providers that it's like,
Oh my
we're like,
gosh.
they don't really want to help me. They just want my money. Right. And it's also, especially for what we both do, working with young families, right? Finances are
Mhm.
typically, one is on out not working usually. So this is a time where you're really pinching the pennies and the dollars,
Ye
and you're afraid to
Yes.
spend money. So again, this is why we need more support, government assisted support for people, because
Yes.
we don't have the money. And even when you do, you're still afraid to spend it because you're like, this
Yes.
isn't worth, they don't we don't see the value in these early systems getting set in place. And that's what I say about postpartum, especially, is because we tend to, stumble into postpartum with all the other challenges that we just have been talking about. But we get there, whatever habits and systems we fall into accidentally, they tend to stick, right? So this idea
Mhm.
of the imbalance in labor in the home, right? That's not going away when the baby starts like talking. That's a system that has been set up so that 10 years down the line, you have so many women like,
Yeah.
my partner doesn't do shit around the house and I can't stand him.
Yep.
And then we have a whole other
Yes.
problem where the family unit is falling apart because in the beginning, these systems accidentally,
Yes.
when we so I'm also a fair play facilitator. I'm not sure, are you familiar with fair play? I think all
Not by that
Okay.
name?
Well, all parents, and your parents for sure. So fair play is a system that teaches couples, partners, how to set up the family system in the home so that the division of labor is more equitable. It's literally a game. There's 100 cards and it lays out everything. So yeah, you and your partner can do it. You
How
just
do I
take
not
out,
know this?
I don't know. They're not very good at getting the word out, but it is. So there's a book, as a cards. There's a documentary actually on Hulu. I think every parent should watch. Every couple really, because what it does, it makes the invisible work of building a home, building a life together, visible. So you literally look at the cards and you go, okay,
Wow.
this is your card. I hold this. And the thing is, it's what's really important is it's carrying that task from beginning to end. So a lot of moms, a lot of women will say, oh, my partner's great. He makes dinner a few times a week. Well, he's making dinner. That's only one part of it. Who planned for the
Yes.
dinner? Who went food shopping? Who made sure that everything was in the cabinets that was
Who's
needed?
cleaning
Right,
up?
exactly.
Who's
Right. So
Mhm.
when we talk about
Who's taking care of the kids while
Right, right.
there's
It's an
dinner
entire
happening?
process. It's not just this one
Yes.
task. So I don't know why I got onto talking about fair play, but part of it is building these systems from the beginning, right? So when
Yes.
you think about starting a business, you would never start a business without communicating greatly with your business partner and saying, okay, what are our
Yep.
goals as a business? What's our brand? What is our financial situation? Where are we going to spend the money? What do we want to, what kind of family do we wouldn't do that if you're starting a business, but we don't
Yes.
plan at all for a family. We're like, oh, let's have a baby. So that sounds fun. Yeah, let's do it. And
Yeah.
then, you do the fun stuff and you get into it and you're like, well, okay, wait, we don't have any systems set up. So especially for neurodivergent people, because again, all of your routines, all of your systems that you've managed are now out the window. And so there's so much we can do to prepare that we're not doing. And it's
Mhm.
multifaceted. And really what it's about is
Yeah.
the first thing women will tell you after they do have a baby is, I didn't know who I was before I even had the baby. Most of us are,
Oh my gosh.
we're coming into it so unhealed. We have so many childhood traumas and wounds that we haven't addressed, and then they come out, right? So much work needs to be done beforehand mentally. This is a lot of mindset. It's not
Yes.
the pills, absolutely, if you need the medication for sure, but I 100% believe, especially for postpartum anxiety, that it is a social construct really, where it's
Yep.
happening because of lack of, not because there's lack inside of
Yes.
us. It's not us.
Yes.
It is lack of
Yes.
support and education and preparation in society that
Yes.
lands us in our
Yes.
postpartum anxiety. So I think part of it is we have to really prepare for the realities, because our expectations are obviously, where are we learning what it should look like from TV, from media?
Yes.
It's like, oh, her water breaks, she has her baby 20 minutes later and everybody's happy and
God,
fine.
seriously.
And that's, you never see the baby again, right? We have no concept of what it's really like to
Or
bring a baby home.
yes, and when they do show when it's an edgy, woke for listeners, not viewers, I'm using air
Air
quotes here.
quotes.
When it's a woke show, um, they show the piece of it that they can manage, and it's usually just the mom is crying a little too often. And if that's your version of postpartum depression, if you have, postpartum depression light, wonderful for you.
Yes. Yes.
That's not what it can look
Right.
like. I
Right.
mean, I
Yeah.
there are people who have caused actual harm to their children, not because they are monsters,
Right.
not because they are evil people, not because they wanted to, but because this is it's not just like, oh, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling down. This is a real bodily,
Mhm.
hormonal,
Mhm.
affect your brain
Mhm. Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah. For me, again, I was so mean to my dogs, and I still have a lot
Oh,
of guilt about that, but I couldn't stand the sound of their nails on the floor. I couldn't every time the baby would
mm,
finally fall asleep, any little noise would make my baby wake my baby up. So if the dog barked, like I was enraged. This is not
yeah,
me. This is not me,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I still look back now. This has been 15 years from my oldest is 15, and I still look back and go, why didn't anybody notice? Why didn't anybody help me? I'm talking even my
yeah,
husband at the time, we're divorced now. Again, I trace it back to this why we're divorced. But my mother, my in-laws, my friends, this isn't
yeah,
me. But I'm in it, and all I know is I'm not right, but I don't know what's wrong, right? And
yeah,
so we don't
mm,
recognize. The other thing is, Emery, like we we know the risk factors. We know the risk factors, but we are not warned. So for me, I had, and goes for lots and lots of women, are coming into this pregnancy after suffering a loss. That's a risk factor. The traumatic birth is a risk factor. A baby in a NICU is a risk factor. Neurodivergence is a risk factor. Infertility. These are all risk factors for mood and anxiety disorders after the baby. Who's talking about that? Who's warning you? Who is giving you some defense
nobody,
mechanisms and saying, hey, heads up? Nobody.
nobody,
It's insane.
nobody.
It's insane. It's even the simplest of things, like saying, "Hey, heads up, here's a list of risk factors." They hand you a bunch of brochures at the OB, but who's reading them? Nobody's
Oh,
reading that shit.
please,
Right. Exactly.
please.
There's such
You bring it home with great intentions, and it
yeah.
sits on your desk, and you discover
No.
it 5 years
Exactly, and
later
you
when
put
you
it in the
finally do a
recycling.
spring cleaning.
Yes. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna blow your mind, and this is what is at the root, I think, of the whole problem, and it's every system that we are working with is there's just lack of individual attention and care. So my first baby I lost at 22 weeks into my pregnancy. My care providers had told me it was a yeast infection. I kept saying it's brown spotting. It's not a yeast infection, and they kept telling me it's a yeast infection. Yeast infection. I believe them. I took the yeast infection medicine. Next day, my water breaks at 22 weeks and 2 days. I go to the hospital. They've proceeded to do five vaginal exams on me. At the time, I had no idea that this was going to introduce bacteria into my birth canal. And suddenly, yes, I'm going to get an infection, spike of fever. My baby now has to be delivered, right? So I lost my baby. This is the part that's going to blow your mind. I go for my 6-week checkup. The doctor who was there as I held my baby, and sorry, trigger warning, I didn't give that, but um, the doctor who was there while he died in my arms, she asked me, "Are you still bleeding?" I said, "Yes, I am. Is that normal?" And she said, "Are you breastfeeding?" Yeah. So she didn't remember that 6 weeks ago she watched my baby die. And how is it possible that this care provider, there was 18 doctors in the practice I cycled through. They are under so much pressure that they can't do their job right. And this is
Yeah.
across the medical field. All doctors will tell you how much stress they are
Yes.
under. They cannot do their jobs right.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I had to
It's
explain to
easy
my
to
doctor and make her feel better that she forgot. I was like, it's okay. She was appalled. She was so ashamed. And I was here comforting my care provider for forgetting that my baby died under her care. So how do we navigate a system like that? How do we expect that our postpartum experience is going to be anything other than mind-boggling? Yeah, this whole system is broken.
Tiff, thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing that story with anyone listening to us today. It's just too important. We have to talk about these things. This is the only way we can equip people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, at the heart of it, we're talking about making sure that families are safe.
Exactly. Exactly.
Seriously, literally, that's the kernel here, is
Mm-hmm.
safety.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
It's a lot.
Tiff, after all of this, if there was one thing you wish someone listening would walk away today knowing, what would it be?
Oh gosh, Emery.
I know.
I think, okay, the one thing, because this is a start, you have to start asking other people to be honest with you about their postpartum experience, because we don't talk to
Mm,
women about it, because I think, one, we don't want to, nobody wants to scare the pregnant lady, right? So we have to start asking people. We have to be brave enough to face the realities of the bad outcomes,
yes.
because we have to be prepared for the worst, hope for the best. But you
Yes.
have to seek it out. And I think so many of us are afraid, because who wants to think about what if? You don't want to, this is an amazing time in your life. You don't want to think about the what if, but
Yep.
you have to think about the what if, because this
That's
is the beginning. And the struggle, it affects every aspect of your life, every
yes.
aspect of your life. So that's what I would say, is just start asking your friends, please be honest with me. What was the most surprising? What did you struggle with the most? They'll tell you after the fact if you ask, but
Yeah.
they're not going to bring this up without you asking.
No. Oh, I'm getting quite emotional.
Oh.
This is really, really meaningful. And again, this work that folks like you and I are doing, anybody who's working with families, when we can see the effects that it has on the individuals and the units,
Hmm.
and have the effect that they then have on those around them, the beauty is unreal,
Yeah.
right? And the pain is equally and
Oh yeah.
oppositely unreal.
Hmm. And
This is huge.
eternal. It says this is with you your whole life. You go to
Indeed.
your grave with these regrets,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, a lot of work needs to be done.
So, Tiff, where can people find you to learn more, or dare I say, even work with
Oh,
you?
that would be amazing. So my website is tiffd.com, and that's TIFFDEE. And everything's there. I'm kind of trying to get off social media a little bit. So I'm not even going to push
Understood.
people there. So just head to my website, and everything is there. I actually offer a free weekly support group. The focus is for neurodivergent
Oh my
parents.
gosh.
Yeah, so that's free.
I love that.
I try to do as much free as possible, because, as we know, people can't always afford to access this. And then also, people should definitely be aware of Postpartum Support International. So there's tons of support groups. So I know, all over the world, there's many options for different
Oh my
groups.
gosh.
So there is support out there. It's just you have to dig for it. Mm-hmm.
Can you specify for your support group, how
Mm.
many up till how many months postpartum do you welcome
Oh,
folks?
anybody. You can start coming in pregnancy. You can start, if you got a 10-year-old and you're still struggling from this stuff, it's totally fine. Because the idea is the
Love it.
solidarity, it's the community, and it's like building this idea that you're
Yes.
not alone. So the groups, I've just started this over the past couple of months, so they're usually small now too. So sometimes people show up and
I
it's just
love
them,
it.
and they get an hour long coaching session with me for free. So
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
so the win
Well,
win.
and I'm assuming too, just because I know you a little bit and I know your heart, I'm assuming too that your doors would be very open to folks who, because can I don't think we expect anybody to know if they're having postpartum
Right,
anything,
exactly.
because your hormones and your feelings, everything is wonky.
Hmm.
Like, whether or not you think you're having any sort of anxiety or depression, or just weepy feelings because you're
Baby
feeling
blues.
weepy
Hmm.
for 1,000
Right.
reasons that are all super valid. Like, maybe just go and chat with people and find out
Hmm.
where you're at.
That's the
Get a
thing.
feel
Mhm.
for what feels right for you, what your normal is, because your
Right.
normal is not going to be somebody else's normal,
Right.
but you're not going to know until you have
Right.
more people in that village.
100%. Yes.
Tiff,
I was going to
Tiff,
say one
I'm
more
so
thing.
glad we met.
I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
please,
So I
please.
also do, if people want to book a 30-minute session with me, it's like a discovery call. It's not a sales call,
Yes.
but I will, if somebody is really struggling and they're not sure which direction, because I am a perinatal mental health specialist certified through Postpartum Support International. So I'm not just some random person off the street, but they can come talk for 30 minutes with me and I can just point them. And even if they do not have the funds financially to work with me, which of course I want them to, because I know I can help them. But if they can't, it's still, they can get that
Yeah.
30-minute boost of like, okay, check this out, try to do this. Here's where you should look. Okay, thank you. Cut you
I
off.
cannot wait to start sending everybody I know to you so
Thank
that
you.
people can get support and
Yeah.
start building their villages
Yes.
and start feeling safe in
Yes.
their families. Tiff,
100%.
you're amazing. We are absolutely doing a part 2, part 3, part 4.
Awesome. Sounds good. I have so much more to say too. There's so much we didn't touch on.
Oh
So
my
yes,
gosh.
awesome.
Literally so much, so much. Okay, Tiff, thank you so much for
Thank
joining me
you so
today.
much. Have a fantastic holiday.